I have to share, I attended a presentation on artificial intelligence in healthcare earlier this week at a conference, which made me want to learn more about this. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce our presenter for today's webinar, SIO Board member Sangeeta Agarawal, who's a master's prepared nurse and CEO and founder of Helpsy. Ms. Agarawal started her career as a software engineer in Silicon Valley, working for companies including IBM, Motorola, Google, and then developing first mobile video platform at a startup later acquired by Skype. She studied integrative medicine by studying, practicing, and conducting research in both Eastern and Western medicine. She spent the next decade as a researcher, oncology nurse, and integrative medicine practitioner at institutions including the Mayo Clinic, Stanford Cancer Center, and UCSF Cancer Center, serving the community. She later created Helpsy, a platform that brings together healthcare experts from evidence-based healthcare modalities, researchers, and healthcare centers to combine their efforts together to offer an all-in-one, interdisciplinary health solution to treat all aspects of health. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Sangeeta Agarawal.
Thank you, Carolyn. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the presentation. So as you can see from my life, I've been living this dual reality of being a techie and then being in healthcare, with the eventual goal of being able to combine the two. So it's been an exciting journey as we are seeing more and more of digital health come into play and innovation becoming mainstream. So I'm very excited to share with you what's going on in the health tech world and what do we make of these. Let me just get to the screen share. Okay. So what's really going on and what do we make of these? So right now you're hearing a lot of buzzwords, everything from Bitcoins and AI and nanotechnology and big data. What do these words really mean? And is this a hype? Is this something real? Are there applications of it in healthcare and where they are? So my goal today is to help you get a sense of the lay of the land. And for some of the more newer technologies, we'll go into the depth of it to understand what they mean and where they are. So the topics that we are going to cover today is going to be telemedicine. We're going to talk about interoperability. We'll talk about wearable technology. We'll obviously talk about AI. Cybersecurity, I'm going to pepper it in all the topics. We'll talk about Internet of Things. We'll talk about drones and robots, big data, dark data, data analytics, virtual reality, augmented reality, and last but not least, we'll go into Bitcoin and blockchain. And I hope this will inspire you to get more excited about these technologies and want to learn more. And I suggest that you look up more into 3D printing, nanotechnology, genome sequencing, if you already are not familiar with it. So let's get started. So telemedicine, I think all of us now know about telemedicine. It's been around for a few years. And in the last few years, over 1 million visits happened over telemedicine. But if you look at the overall numbers, there are over 1 billion visits that happen in person. So there is room to grow, and that's where telemedicine is at. So I think we have got the technology stabilized. We have figured out workflows of how it integrates in the healthcare system. There is starting to be some reception on the policy level and from the experts. So telemedicine is geared to go more mainstream. And we are starting to see that because in the research and the data that's coming out, it's showing that telemedicine is supposed to be reaching over 54 billion of the US market by 2023. And radiology will be one main area. There's also a lot of interest and acceptance from immunology, allergy, places where it's easy to do a consult to address people's problems. So we are going to start seeing more of that. Currently, you're already seeing tele-hospital, tele-clinic visits penetrated into a lot of hospital and healthcare settings. And currently, North America has the largest share of telemedicine market. So with having said that, let's do our poll. Alyssa, do we see the poll results?
Yep, just 1 second.
Okay. So do I start showing my screen?
Nope, so you're fine. They should be showing up on everyone's screen.
Oh, okay. I can't see them, so I'm wondering.
Oh, all right. So we have 25% said yes, 50% said no, and 25% said somewhat.
Okay, okay. So as we see, there is some adoption, but there is still time to go mainstream, right? So telemedicine, now that it's proven, it's shown to save a lot of money and improve patient compliance. I think it's geared to go mainstream. So for the people who said no, I'd love to hear more later offline about what are your challenges and how your center or your organization can think of leveraging telemedicine. So let's move on. So next we're going to talk about data interoperability. So e-patient Dave has been asking for having access to his data since 2007. He says, I own my data. I should be able to carry it around everywhere with me because it's mine. And that's what data interoperability means, is that it's the ability to be able to take your data and be able to use it across multiple platforms, across multiple providers, whether they are or they're not part of your hospital or your application vendor system. So for your healthcare data to be able to move seamlessly across a large number of organizations and people, and for me as a patient to own my data. And as we know that this war between patients as well as healthcare professionals who want to have this independence and access to data has been at odds with EMR and EHR companies as well as health tech companies, which believe that they own the data. So they should be the only one who have access to data. So this war has been heating up for 10 years now, right? But we have just as of late last year, there's been a breakthrough in that. And that is through something called FHIR. So you want to remember this, FHIR, FHIR. So what it does is FHIR basically enables interoperability of data, okay? And it does that by being the API. So API is like this translator in between, which can translate data across multiple platforms. So it says, okay, EHR, you use the API and I will be able to convert the data into a form that somebody else can understand. So so it serves as this translator, this in-between person between data that is coming from EMRs, it's coming from different apps, it's coming from patient portal, it's coming from mobile APIs. It can get data from anywhere and push data back anywhere. So it says, I will remove the complexity for you. You just need to implement these, get this data and push this data. That's it. And the rest of the complexity of what is the structure and things will be handled by me. And as a result, now a patient or an organization is able to share the data and be able to use that patient's data from another organization. So that is the philosophy behind interoperability, and FHIR is the technology that is enabling this interoperability. So one big announcement in this regard just came out yesterday, which is that Apple is now going to be using FHIR, and they're partnered with over 12 hospitals to be able to get the patient's data, like their medications, their doctor's visits, allergies, and their entire medical record. And it will be available as a PHI on the patient's iPhone. And they're partnered with these various hospitals to be able to transfer the data back and forth seamlessly. Right now, from what I understand, it's about patient can see this data, and now along with the health kit that Apple has, where it's monitoring your different vitals and you can monitor your heart rate and sleep, you can actually start to see it's a rich bed for being able to be able to do it not just for wellness, but for improving certain clinical outcomes and being able to now build interesting feedback loops and solutions on top of it. So this is right away the relevance of FHIR here. So let's go to the next poll.
Okay, so we had 50% of our participants answer yes, 0% answer no, and 50% answer maybe.
Wow, okay, so it's all positive, either it's yes or maybe. So I think that's a really good indication that I think on our side as healthcare professionals or researchers, we do really want to give people access to their data, right? And I think this movement has picked up and gained enough steam to now see rapid change. So I hope you'll watch this with interest and see how you can partner with various organizations to give people back their data, and also think about it from research perspective for those researchers who are listening, in terms of now that you have access to this patient's data and having them in their day-to-day life, of being able to tap into it, what would you want to study and how you can see that change happening or the behavior change dropping and being able to manipulate that to help them. So a lot of interesting opportunities coming out of this. So moving on, now let's go to, oops, skipped a couple of screens here. Oh. Okay, so next let's talk about wearable technology. So I think a lot of us have some kind of a strap around our around us, around our wrist. Either it's an Apple phone or a Fitbit or something that's measuring our data and helping us with some aspect of health. There is a lot more. There is glasses that will, I've seen the application of glasses where it helps a breastfeeding mother to be able to show that to her doula or her provider to see if the baby is latching correctly. There are applications of Google Glasses that people are using for navigation, for improving their vision of field. There are smart T-shirts that can power all your gadgets, jackets like that. There are trousers that can leverage the energy and use your movement energy as a way of powering devices. There are shoes which will give you GPS directions and with the lights on it. So all kinds of cool stuff that's actually coming to mainstream. So it's quite fascinating to see that, and I think we are starting to use more and more of these devices in our day-to-day lives now. So in fact, about 30% of people in US use it, about 20% or so in Europe, and then a pretty high number, 34 to 37% in Asia. Right. So a lot of people have adopted these different devices and different technologies for using in their day-to-day life, and they have a lot of potential benefit for healthcare. But does it really help in improving their health? Have we got to that point yet? And I will come back to that in a second, because I want to first cover Internet of Things, which is somewhat related to this. Right. So Internet of Things is basically devices that were not typically on internet before. Like imagine your refrigerator and your TV and your coffee machine was not really connected to internet or Bluetooth before, right? But now a lot of devices are, which means when your alarm wakes you up, it automatically adjusts the temperature in your room for what you like when you're awake. Your coffee machine starts to brew you coffee. Your refrigerator is talking to your toaster, helping to get your breakfast ready. Its refrigerator is able to determine if you're running low on certain groceries, and it should order it. And then your car starts to warm up so you can be ready to go. And along the way, your virtual assistant is telling you what meetings you can expect during the day, how your kids are doing, what is the status of everybody at home, right? So that's where we are going towards, and it's quite fascinating, because I was working and building these smart home and mobile device technologies in 2002, 2003 at IBM. So I used to actually, they have a mobile computing lab, smart home lab, and I loved it so much. I used to spend a lot of time there because I didn't mind being experimented on. So we had some of these technologies that we were playing with it and trying to see if we can find benefits to it. So when it comes to healthcare, does it have any value yet? And I think it's just starting to, because where these technologies have been more useful is in non-healthcare areas, and healthcare is slow in adapting many of the technologies. We are a little more conservative, right? So where you're starting to see these IoT devices used is in inventory management. So being able to see, do you have enough of certain devices that need stocking, and if not, can it automatically identify you so you don't have to go and measure it? It's being used in workflow integration. So your machine that is measuring blood pressure and all the patient's data on a regular basis is able to directly send that information to the EMR. So it's stored, and you can utilize and analyze it from your desktop without having to go and manually collect the data and write it, right? Medical device integrations, so a lot of remote monitoring of patients is being possible with these medical device integrations, where the data is being sent back and forth between the devices in a patient's home or on devices that people are wearing, like in aging situations, or people who have just been sent home after a major surgery. Now you're able to monitor their condition even though they are back home. So their weight and if they've fallen down, etc. So a lot of those integrations and applications are starting to happen when it comes to this Internet of Things and wearable devices. But it's still in the nascent field, I think, because right now the issues is that there is no interoperability, and it didn't exist until like a few months ago, right, where there wasn't even an option for interoperability. So the data just got stuck in different devices. There is no feedback loop, so even if I collect data, then what happens to that data? It just stays there. We did a study at UCSF a few years ago when Fitbit came out, I think a year or two after it came out, to see, do people use it and for how long they use it. And we found that typically most people use it for 1 month for the novelty of it. And then on average, by 3 months, most people stop using it. And that's because I can collect the data, but I'm not getting enough answers and enough reward from it to know what to do about it. And with so much data being collected, as a provider, you don't have time to look at this data if a patient comes to see you. And it's just collecting this massive volumes of data, which is of serving no value right now. And as you saw, like, the interoperability revolution that's just happening is now going to affect and improve this situation, right? And security risk, huge security risk with this, with IoT devices. Reason being, so these are like tiny little chips with tiny power and tiny memory and tiny processing ability. So I'm writing some programs on it to be able to do some small things and be able to run on a small amount of memory, which means I don't have enough memory or enough capacity, enough power to be able to do a lot of screening and a lot of layers, security layers, and a lot of checks, etc. Right? So these devices, you can hack them like crazy. So like I was telling you, when I was doing these IoT classes back in 2000, and I would go and play with this. So I would hack a lot. I would hack a lot of lights and, a lot of different devices, doorbells, temperature machines. And then when I was the guinea pig and I agreed to stay in the smart home for a few days, my evil friends, they would hack all kinds of things, and they would like turn on the lights in the middle of the night and turn it off, and I would hear the refrigerator open. So it can be a prank, but on a serious note, these devices are not secure. And when you start to look at it from people's health perspective, then addressing the security risk becomes important. And that's why cybersecurity is taking more and more of an important role in this area, and it's becoming an increasing risk in today's world when it comes to data being hacked. But the core issue from a healthcare perspective, what stays is that, can the healthcare industry use these IoT devices for effective patient engagement without overwhelming the providers? Because it's either the engagement is missing or it's too much data that healthcare professionals, we don't have time to deal with it. So that's currently where it is. It's trying to play in that area and trying to figure out how to address it. So let's go to the poll.
So this was the wearable tech question. How many wearable tech or IoT devices do you and your family use? And 33% said 0, and 67% said 1 to 3. And 4 to 7 got 0%, and 7 plus got 0%.
Wow. Okay. So I think we are starting to see that most people are using some devices, right? And I think over time we will see more and more devices. And what I hope is that as we figure out how to use these devices in a healthcare perspective, we will see more applications of it. So for the people who find this topic interesting, I would say find the companies, the researchers, the techies who are interested in this and go work with them and help them to do it right so they don't drive you crazy. They actually build solutions that work with you and for you. So moving on, that brings us to big data, data analytics and dark data. So what is big data, right? So people talk about big data all the time. So how is big data different than all the data that has existed so far, right? Is it just because the amount is big, because now you have all these devices collecting so much data from you every day and they have thousands of terabytes of data? Is that what makes it big data? Or is there more? So if you go back to the core principles, the definition of big data is that it's volume, so it's large amount of data in terabytes and extra terabytes. It's velocity, so it can be data that's at rest, it's just staying there, or it's data that is moving around between different systems and different places. It can be data in many forms. That means it doesn't need to be text or numbers. It can be multimedia. It can be just gobbledygook of data. And it can be data without any clarity to it. That means there can be mistakes in the data. There can be discrepancies, right? So that is the core of what is big data and why it's different than regular structured data. Because it has minimum structure, you use it how you want it, and it's cheap. So what are the applications of big data now, right? So big data, basically you are using a lot of data and being able to find out what is the relationship you want to see in that data. Can you find some pattern that would be useful to you? So for example, the emergency department in Paris, they are able to forecast when, for example, there'll be a flu outbreak and be able to staff up enough for that. Just in last month, I was at HHS for the opioid crisis, and we hosted a hackathon, and in that hackathon, we were able to build solutions. Companies were able to build solutions where they could see that there was a spike in drug abuse in another county, and since it's on the path, it's likely to have that issue. So now they can get enough of the drugs and the staff to be able to handle this crisis that's coming their way, right? It can be used for precision diagnosis and pop health, as in now you can see 5,000, 50,000, 500 gigathousand scans and be able to match your patient's radiology scan against that to see what is the exact diagnosis and what has happened to the people who had this issue. So what are the best treatment options for this person? it goes to pop health, being able to study population health and being able to see that at a larger level and being able to analyze that data that otherwise couldn't be done. Genome sequencing. Genomes generate massive amount of data. So it used to take months and years to be able to analyze a small amount of that data. But now you can sequence the whole genome and you can analyze large amounts of data at one time. So that helps you to understand what's going on in genomes. And on a personalized one-to-one level, you can apply what you're learning from this macro picture for this particular individual to be able to alert them about what's going on and what kind of path they can expect for their recovery. So those are the applications, but there are still a lot of issues when it comes to big data. And those issues basically render the data as useless. Like as in, if we are collecting data, but we are not able to use it. So we are collecting thousands and thousands of terabytes of data. Think of it like garbage, right? So you're collecting all that garbage, but you're not able to use it. So that's dirty data or dark data, right? So as we start to generate a lot of this data, there's going to be concerns about a lot of dirty data and dark data getting generated, and for us to have some system of handling that, kind of like recycling, right? Or being more mindful. So the issues are that data is dirty a lot of times. The data that is coming into the healthcare system, it's not very clean, not very user friendly. You need people with a lot of expertise to be able to identify these patterns and generate insights. And these experts need to be from dual or 2 or 3 different areas so they can actually understand that space. Data sharing is limited, so you're kind of stuck with your data, but not able to talk to each other. And there is huge security risk, because the more data you have and the more data is flowing around, there is a risk of that data being hacked and used for something incorrect, right? So that's those are the challenges that come with big data. Okay, so now moving on, let's okay, yeah, we have a poll. So as we are waiting for the results, I'll start telling you about AI. Okay, so what is AI? We hear a lot about AI, artificial intelligence. What it means is that it's the ability for a computer to be able to perform the task that requires human intelligence. So being able to perceive things visually, being able to talk, being able to make decisions, and being able to do other things that generally require human intelligence. So can a machine do that? That's what AI is. Go ahead,
Sangeeta,
Alyssa. Yeah.
I have the poll results for you. So the question was, what are the issues with big data? Select all that apply. So 17% said data is expensive. 83% says data is dirty / has massive security risks. 50% said data needs to have a consistent type and structure. 100% says data needs an expert to create value. And 83% said data sharing is limited.
Okay, good. Okay, so the correct answer is data is not expensive. So those of you who marked it, that's wrong. Data is cheap. Data is dirty and has massive security risk. That's correct. Data needs to have consistent type and structure. No, that's the whole point of having big data, is that you can have any type and any structure to it. So it gives you that freedom. And data needs to have an expert is true, and data sharing is limited is also true as of right now, but we hope that will change pretty soon. Okay, good. So AI, right? So AI is basically, can a computer do what we as humans can do? It started, if we had more time, I would go more into it. But it started with neural networks. Then it went into machine learning. And now we are at deep learning, which is basically being able to have multiple nodes that can talk to each other and be able to layer it with intelligence from multiple types of areas, like being able to layer your medical intelligence with intelligence from business and analytics and finance, etc. So you become much more smarter in what you can do. Right. So why does AI matter? Where is it effective? So AI can easily replicate, it can automate repetitive tasks. So if you're doing the same thing again and again, then you can automate that. It can do deep data analysis because our human mind is limited in how much data we can hold and remember and process, but a computer is not. So it can analyze large amounts of data um, for being able to derive insights. It can add intelligence to current dumb products, right? So we say smartphone, it's sort of smart, but before your phone could only call, or before your toaster didn't know that it's 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock and you want to eat your breakfast. So now you have a smart toaster that knows that, hey, it's time for you to eat your breakfast and I'm going to start toasting your bread, right? So it can add intelligence to products. And the beauty of artificial intelligence, which is theoretical, it's kind of in the researchy phase and starting to see implementation, is that it learns from itself. So progressive learning, which means that I didn't know about this today, but now that I've seen this enough, I'm able to learn from it. Like weekend, you get up at 10 o'clock, not 7 o'clock. So now I will know that you eat your toast at 10 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, but at 7 in the morning on weekday, which I didn't know before, and it wasn't programmed into me, but I'm able to learn that. So that is progressive learning, and I absolutely love that. And that's kind of what I do at Helpsy, is being able to learn and make systems more intelligent. So what are the applications? Fascinating applications. You can use AI to detect brain bleeds. You can use AI for being for voice assistants, chatbots, and for them talking to each other and syncing up. Imagine like if you had 5 executive assistants for you. You can use it for verifying insurance automatically instead of having to manually call them. You can use it for chatbots, becoming very popular and quite easy to implement. You can use the robots for explaining AI for explaining lab results, and that's what doc.ai, one of the companies, is doing that, freeing up the doctor's time. You can use it for detecting security threats, so signatures and stuff that looks weird that is entering your system. Now, when your system is being monitored all the time, it's able to detect those issues. You can use it for building bionic hands that are smart, that can do things. And this is just like a summary of all of those in case you have the PDF. Okay, so on to next poll.
Okay, so the question was, how many AI and data analytics applications do you use in your personal life? 50% said 0, 33% said 1 to 3, 17% said 4 to 7, and 0% said 7 plus.
Okay. Okay, interesting. So I think we are starting to see some penetration of AI in our lives. What I envision is that in a few years, we won't be thinking of AI as a separate thing, just the way we don't think of being online, online solutions and web-based solutions, 10, 20 years ago, that was a thing, right? But now it's an expectation. And I think a few years from now, AI will be part of our lives. It will be pervasive in everything we do. And we won't be talking about AI because it will just be expected. It's built as part of our life for systems to be intelligent and be able to do the most that they can do. Which brings us to the next poll. So the question that everybody is thinking about.
It's how many AI and data analytics applications do you use at work in a healthcare application?
Okay, what are the answers?
Got to give them another couple seconds to respond.
Okay.
Okay, so 40% said 0, 60% said 1 to 3, and 0% said 4 to 6 or 7 plus.
Very nice. Okay, so we are starting to see some use in healthcare settings. I think that's fantastic. I'd love to know more offline what kind of AI tools you're using and where you see it going for your organization, and how healthcare technology innovators can help you, where you're getting stuck, what you hope to achieve. Would love to know more. Okay, so now let's talk more, getting more and more fascinating stuff. So let's talk about drones and robots. So here are some interesting examples. So drones, what is drone? Drone is basically a device that can fly, that can move from one place to another and carry stuff for you. Right, so one of the biggest use of drone right now has been in healthcare, has been in emergency. So being able to carry the first aid kits for rescue workers, and especially for its use in remote areas of the world and in war zones, and being able to itself be able to do CPR. So that's where drones are being used. As far as robotics, this is robotic surgery. So these two silver things you see, they are actually stitching up an organ. So they're able to tie a knot and stitch an organ. This is a robot nurse, which is helping to carry heavy patients and helping them to move heavy loads and people across. This is Zynex robot. So Zynex robot, I don't know if there's a better way to pronounce it. It is like a MRSA cleaner. So it goes in and it disinfects the place so that there isn't a risk of having contamination from one patient to the other. So it's able to go in and do that quickly for us. And this robot is able to carry people in war zones. So it's robust, it's strong, it can walk, it can hold, and it can carry wounded soldiers, it can carry equipment, and it's quite resilient to rough terrain. So it's being used a lot in medical settings. And this one is Pepper, and Pepper is a reception robot. So she's able to check people in and be able to check their insurance, etc., and help them get set up. So we are starting to see a lot of examples of drones and robotics just starting to get used. Now, these are, I would say, in kind of the prototype research application phase. The ones that are being used on a regular basis in hospitals is the first one is at Boston Children's Hospital. It delivers food. The second one is our tug robot at UCSF, which helps with carrying stuff around. So it serves as our helper. And then the third one is again at Boston Children's. It's a medical record robot. So it asks questions and it helps to dispense information, etc., answer questions. So we are starting to see applications of these robotics in healthcare settings and helping us to do a lot of the things that otherwise required a lot of humans. Which brings to our question, and that is there on everybody's minds. So let's start the poll. So I believe the question is, will robots, AI replace human workers? Is that correct?
Oh, nope. The one we had first was how many drones or robotic applications do you use at work?
Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
And then I can launch the other one after.
Okay, yeah, let's launch both one after the other.
So for how many drones or robotic applications do you use at work? 83% said 0 and 17% said 1 to 3. So not a ton of usage.
Not a ton of usage yet. What I would say is that every place that has used it as mainstream, once they figured out what works, they all have saved billions and billions of dollars and not gone back to doing things the way they were doing before. So I suggest looking at it, see what are the areas of need in your organization where you're short staffed. If any of the robotic or drone technology can help you in saving money or in better utilizing your task force, it might be interesting to look at it, and it might be interesting to collaborate with organizations that are doing research in this area, because you can help them to think about it the right way. So that brings us to our most worrisome question.
So the question was, will robots/AI replace human workers? 33% said yes, 67% said no.
Okay, good. So you are now having the conversation that some of the biggest geeks in the world are having. So if you said yes, it will replace us, you are in the Elon Musk and gosh, what's the Stephen, gosh, I'm forgetting the name, the scientist who wrote the History of Time, that book. So you are in their camp. If you said no, it will not replace us, then you are in the Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg camp. So there's no right answer. But what I can tell you is that if you look at what AI can do, right? AI can automate things that can be easily automated. Healthcare, a lot of the work that we do requires a lot of learning over the years, which is why all our healthcare schooling is so long, and experience matters a lot. So healthcare jobs that require experience, that require understanding for many years, cannot be easily automated. So the chances of automating those, as you can see, is very low. 0.3%, 0.35%. So very small risk of automating those jobs. But if you look at some of the factory worker jobs or jobs that that can be written by a fixed algorithm, those can be automated. I do think that any any technology or any work that we are doing, for AI to be successful and robots to be successful, it requires deep learning, which means they need to spend time and learn with you. And if it, as humans, it takes us time to learn, for me to mentor under one of you and learn to be a good nurse or a good researcher, it takes me a few years. Then just imagine a computer is likely to need more because they don't have a lot of the faculties that we as human beings have. So I would say that if AI is interesting for you, then get engaged in deep learning and get engaged in teaching computers how to do a better job of what you're doing in specific areas. So moving on, want to quickly touch on virtual reality and augmented reality. So what virtual reality is that you are able to put on some headsets, some devices that will create a different environment around you, so you feel like you're in a different environment. And augmented reality is that you have your current environment and there is something interlaid on top of that. So that's augmented reality. Let me take a short break. Alyssa, you want to make a quick announcement?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know we are about 4 minutes to 1 o'clock Eastern time, so we are going to go over. And if you want to stay, please feel free to stay. If you have to leave the presentation, I will be emailing it out this afternoon, and a video of the rest of the presentation will be available next week. And if you have any questions, feel free to submit them. Even if you leave, we'll make sure they get answered and you get your answer. You can also email any questions to info@integrativeonc.org, and we will make sure that Sangeeta gets them and can follow up with you after the presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Sorry, we went a little bit over. So I'll try to quickly get through the other stuff. So virtual reality, where we are seeing the biggest use is actually in medical education. So the picture you saw here, this is actually training people about the human anatomy with a virtual reality model. And here you're training people about surgery with virtual reality solutions. I think some of you have seen the Google lenses that are coming out that can help with reading data and addressing diabetes and different medical information. So that is interlaying the augmented reality on top. The other area where we are seeing application of virtual reality is in remote surgery. So this is a surgeon here performing an operation remotely with the devices on a patient who's, as you can see, far away from him. And this one is actually eye test that's being done using virtual reality and augmented reality. So it's able to actually not just ask them questions, but being able to make them feel like they're feeling some kind of pressure, and how does that experience feel for them. So that's virtual reality, augmented reality. I'll skip the question and quickly go into Bitcoin and blockchain. Since this is so much hype around this topic. The reason I put this topic last is because while there is a lot of hype about it, there isn't any real application of it in healthcare right now. So let's understand the basics. What is Bitcoin and blockchain and how it works, right? So think of it like PayPal. You want to send money from A to B, and earlier on PayPal, you would both have your PayPal account and you would be able to transfer money, right? Bitcoin works in a similar way. You have a public key and a private key. So your email address that the other person knows, and your bank account information, which is secure. So you exchange the public key, and now on your private key, you send the information to the other person. And then what happens in the background is that there are people who are called miners. So the miners rush to get this transaction, and they generate a hash. Hash is like a fingerprint, a keyword that didn't exist in the system before. So that becomes the fingerprint of your transaction. Okay, and that is then sent across to multiple people. So they are all saying, yeah, I see what you see. So yeah, that transaction is valid. It's kind of like a peer-to-peer, right? We are all making sure what we are saying or doing is correct. So now it gets recorded and the money is transferred to the other person. So that is what Bitcoin and blockchain is, right? So Bitcoin is the actual money that is getting transferred, and blockchain is the process through which it's getting transferred. Okay. And because the miner, every time they do this, they make some money, they collect some Bitcoins. Okay. So that's why people are getting rich, because they're looking for these transactions and rushing in to figure out these keys. Okay. So what is important to know in this Bitcoin and blockchain is that these two used to be synonymous earlier, that they go together. But over time, they've each gained their own persona. So Bitcoin is the currency. Now think of Bitcoin like Google, in the sense that we used to have web search, right? You're doing search. Google is one of the company that does search. Same way, cryptocurrency is virtual currency, and Bitcoin is one of the companies that is doing cryptocurrency. Okay. But it's become synonymous with cryptocurrency. So but there is a huge risk to it, because anybody can create another currency, and if enough people use it, it could be of value, right? Blockchain is the process of being able to work across multiple platforms and be able to have these financial transactions that are not necessarily ruled by government. So blockchain is what is actually getting a lot of enterprise interest, because it has a value of being able to do large financial transactions across multiple organizations in a clean and efficient and cheap way. So you're starting to see more blockchain technology being used in fintech, which is financial tech innovation. On the healthcare side, while there is talk about it, but not much has actually happened in terms of even prototypes and solutions that are effective. Google has just got into it with something called DeepMind using blockchain, where it's trying to verify the authenticity of the data, like auditing the data across multiple people, right? So as you see a patient moving from their primary care to their allergist to their skin practitioner to an oncologist to whoever, the data is getting confused and lost. So how can you use blockchain to transmit the data and keep the truth of the data intact and keep it as a continuing journey? So that's where blockchain is starting to be used in Google with the DeepMind, but still in very early stages. So we'll see how much of the technology actually gets used. So, which brings us to our next question. Poll, please. So this is, I believe, our final poll.
Yes, it is. So the question was, did you buy Bitcoin, or are you planning to buy soon? And 100% of our respondents said no.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad you're not planning to buy Bitcoin, because I think you're absolutely right. It's well, we can't say absolute because we don't know what future holds, but it is at hype right now. If you had bought it a few years ago, then yeah, it would make sense. But right now, what the data shows is that by end of 2018, about 46% of analysts believe that the value of Bitcoin will go down, and it's very volatile. I'd heard about Bitcoin many, many years ago, but I did not go for it. And the reason is because it was mostly used on the dark web. So for doing things that were illegal. So I just didn't see any reason why I would need to do those transactions or need that money. It's been interesting to see it come to mainstream. But I think it needs to stabilize. I do think blockchain technology will become very useful over time. So to summarize, my key takeaways is that I think we are at a perfect time to innovate in healthcare to better serve our patients. I hope that we all can start to get more engaged. And I think people who build these technologies, they need our help, because what you know in terms of the deep knowledge you have and how you understand people and serve them is something that they don't. So together we can build better solutions. Also, I do believe that while AI will not replace humans, not for next 30 or 50 years, but I do think that people who use innovation powered solutions will replace the ones who don't. Because as organizations start to see the financial value of it, they will start to move towards leveraging this technology. And I think for us in healthcare, it's important to recognize that we need to work on addressing our tech issues, health tech issues, and better serve our patients, because if not, then the tech giants and the tech industry and technology is now ripe for disrupting healthcare. So it will come from outside if it doesn't come from inside. So those are my takeaways. I'm optimistic in the future of health and tech. And I'll leave you with a couple of sayings. So Elon Musk says, failure is an option. If things are not failing, we are not innovating enough. So you're going to see a lot of things break, but eventually we'll figure it out, how to make it work. And Steve Jobs said, I want to put a ding in the universe. So I hope you think about how you're going to put a ding in the universe. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry we went over by a few minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to let Alyssa know, and she'll send them to me, and I'd be happy to answer them. And Alyssa, I'll let you decide if you want me to stay for a few minutes or we wrap up. So back to you, Alyssa.
Thank you, Sangeeta. I just want to thank you for a great presentation, and I want to thank everyone again for their participation in this installment of our Society for Integrative Oncology webinar series. I think we are going to wrap it up. We haven't had any questions come in, so I'd like to welcome anyone who may have any questions to follow up at info@integrativeonc.org, and we'll make sure that they get to Sangeeta and you get an answer. And I just want to remind you that I'll be emailing out a PDF of the presentation this afternoon, and that next week a recording of this webinar will be available on the members only section of the Society for Integrative Oncology website. So this concludes today's presentation, and thank you again for joining us.